Welcome to the Infernal Schoolhouse Podcast, Explosions and Fire. I'm Bryan.
And I'm Aaron.
And today on the podcast, we've decided to talk about creating fantasy art. And since Aaron and I have somewhat limited experience with this, we've decided to ask our new friend Alyssa to join us. Welcome to the podcast, Alyssa.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So we think that, obviously, I think most people would agree that art is a critical component in the world of TTRPGs, as it helps us see the world being described in our mind's eye. We're excited to have you on and talk a little bit more about the creation of fantasy art. So before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about your own business and then how you got into creating art?
Well, I have always been ever since I was little, I was creating things, drawing. I actually was like kind of a late bloomer when it came to talking. I didn't learn to, I think I knew how to speak, but I just didn't want to until I was like 4 years old. And so I was always drawing pictures though. And yeah, it just kind of stuck with me. My mom also was really passionate about art, and she probably could have gone really far with it, but she chose a totally different career path because it was more stable as far as like income goes. And so it's always been a huge part of my life. And I went to art school, and then, here I am. I worked at a company that designs packages for toys. So that was like my first big job, I guess. And they closed down. And then I had always been really interested in kind of just being able to draw what I wanted to draw and not having somebody tell me what to draw. And so I was like, well, I'm unemployed, so I'm going to give this a shot. And then I just started doing conventions, and that's
awesome. So question for you, because I kind of got latched onto this one talking about designing packages for toys. Was it like some of those ironic toys where it's like the crazy cat lady action figure, or was it more mainstream stuff?
Oh my God, what if she designed that, Aaron? You would die.
It was more like mainstream stuff, more like preschool, like really little kid stuff. So.
Nice. That's really cool.
Okay, so you said that during that time after that job, you decided you wanted to draw what you wanted to draw. Mm-hmm. So did you always kind of have in your mind's eye this like fantastical, because, we're going to get into some of your creations, but it's very fantasy imaginative. Was that always in there?
Yeah, I have always really so I read a lot of Goosebumps books as a kid, and I feel like I'm kind of like a girly person, but I've just like got this like inner goth. So yeah, I think art is just kind of how I express myself in that way. And yeah, I've always been into horror and just creepy stuff.
I feel like Goosebumps is a solid foundation for any artistic career, for sure.
Let's dig in a little bit about art school for a second. Although I have a degree in liberal arts, it's nowhere near actually doing art. So do they also have any classes on how to draw zombie unicorns or amorous vampires there?
I didn't take any, but I did take...
They may have them. They might be there.
Yeah. I took what kind of like help. I think what was a tremendous help for me in like just learning how to create characters and like these things that have always like been in my head that I had a hard time actually putting together on paper. I took a character design class, and that really like taught me how, I guess when you're watching like a movie and, there's a villain, like how to portray that they're the villain just in like how their bone structure is and stuff like that. So, and I've always kind of gravitated towards like the villains as being my favorite characters. So when I kind of learned these like secrets, I guess, on how to make them look scary, it just really like clicked for me. And I, just started creating my own. So
I have a question then. Between the two of us right here, from I guess a bone structure, which one
I was going to ask that exact question.
Which one is going to be the greater villain?
And also a follow-up question: can you coach us a little bit more on how to be villainous?
Okay, So I would say Bryan is probably more of a villain.
I would have totally agreed with that.
That plays out in real life. 100%.
Yeah, just one like an example. Trying to think. I think his name's like the Shadow Man from Princess and the Frog. You know
Dr. Facilier.
Yes, I'm not saying you look like him, Bryan. But
I don't know what we're
I
talking
can
about
see
yet,
it.
but I'm Googling the shit out of this right now.
okay, he's like real like he has like very just.
Oh, I
defining-
want to be him. I want to be more like him.
right. He's very like skinny and like, I don't know, his bone structure is just very like prominent. And
Yeah.
Love
He's
it.
got a cane. He's wearing purple. Also, he's got a skull and crossbones on his hat, just in case you missed the clue.
yeah, and even like Maleficent too. Like she has like pointy horns and like, I don't know. Yeah, like her chin is very pointy. And so
Okay,
like,
now pull this back to me though. So what do I have in common with these characters?
I think you should be hearing it right now,
like
Bryan.
a very like thin face. And I mean, neither one of you really seem like villains to me, but if I had to
one of
choose
us is for sure.
I like the backpedaling because you came to that original answer very quickly.
Yeah, like that's gotta be Bryan. Yeah, we have this conversation a lot on this show, but Aaron very much identifies with the paladin, which is like a noble knight for good, and Bryan very much identifies as a rogue, a sneaky, backstabby kind of, thief kind of vibe. Well, thank you for validating some long-standing traditions on our show.
You're welcome.
Okay, so let's talk. I want to hear you talk a little bit about how we met you because that's super fun. You mentioned a little bit conventions, but let's get into that side of it.
Yeah. So I love doing conventions. I did my first one. It was just like the end of 2020. And I was so nervous to do it because it was like, I don't know. I think like artists sometimes tend to like hide behind their work a little bit. And so that was kind of just like the first time that I was going to actually have people coming up and I'd have to talk about my stuff. But yeah, I had a lot of fun that one. And I started to do more of them. And I live in Idaho, so there are no conventions here. And if there are, I don't know of them. So I kind of travel around to them.
If
My
there are
family
other
call
potato
around.
conventions.
Yeah, I know. Well, and I've thought of, I don't know if you remember my monster cookies that were there, the magnets.
Yeah, those are cute.
Yeah. I'm like, I could do potatoes, right?
I'm a potato.
Yeah. But no, my family lives in Colorado and I did Rocky Mountain Nightmares last year and it was the first year. So I wasn't sure how it was going to go. I thought I did all right for it being like the first year. And yeah, so I definitely wanted to do it again. And then I think you came up to my table and introduced yourself and we just
Did you know right when I walked up that I was a villain? You were like, oh, I already know this story. I know how this plays out.
Sure. I was like, I don't know. No, you seemed awesome. And yeah, I had a lot of fun talking to you. And
it's all an act. Yeah, you mentioned the specific part that I'm really interested in too, which is I feel in any sort of artistic endeavor that I have, it feels dirty to market it. You know what I mean? It's like two different skill sets. Like you create and you're just like cutting your chest wide open and it's so vulnerable. And then for you to have to switch gears and be like, oh my God, this one's so cute. I love this one. You should buy this one. It's like, it's weird, right? Yeah.
And it's also weird. And I know a lot of artists struggle with like pricing their work and, being like, well, this one is worth $500 because I say it is, because I worked hard on it.
Because I made that up.
Yeah. And so, yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. But
because my mom said I'm really talented. And if you want, she's here and you can meet her.
I know. Yeah. That's why I bring her along. So she's kind of my.
So a question, I guess, around your art and your content is that how do you decide what you want to create? And are you like just kind of struck with an idea or do you do a lot of research on hot monsters at the moment?
I kind of draw what I want to draw. And I do have a Patreon where I will post a poll at the beginning of the month and I'll have my subscribers vote on So the poll is like, what drawing theme should be for that month. And so I'll have my subscribers vote on that. And
it's a democracy. Your Patreon is a democracy.
I guess, yeah, it's kind of.
Or is it more of like an enlightened dictatorship? Where you're like, no, we're not doing that. That
sounds like a villain question right there.
Well, I've had there have been some times where I'm like, oh, that seems like an okay theme to post on there. Like I'll put that as an option. But then like once it wins, I'm like, oh no, like I'm stuck drawing. I don't even know. There was, I don't even know. Cause I always end up like loving the theme, but there have been some themes where I'm like, oh, I really don't want to draw this.
Yeah. Like I gave that as a throwaway. You weren't supposed to pick that one.
Yeah. Which is cool because it ends up being like kind of a challenge. Like, how can I make this fun for me? But yeah, and it usually ends up being a ton of fun.
Well, if they pick snail, then you just flip it to zombie snail.
Yeah.
That's easy. Okay, so let's talk about your art specifically. And when we do post this, we'll make sure and put a link. And we'll have you at the end talk about how people can find you. But talk about some of your favorite pieces, your favorite drawings that you've done.
I have one that I sold last July at a convention in California, Midsummer Scream, and I didn't think that anyone was going to buy it because I did it like while I was in school, but I continued to work on it even after school. And it probably took me like 3 years to do. And I was kind of just like, I think that like if I could have, I probably would have continued I probably would still be working on it. So I didn't really.
Someone bought it because you needed to stop.
Yes. And my mom was actually the one who told me to stop. She was like, no, like you need to take this and then I think part of me like wasn't sure if I wanted to let it go too, because I had become like so attached to it. But I sold it last year, and it was Snow White, and it was kind of like a creepy looking Snow White. I took a reference photo I didn't take the photo. I found a reference photo of Amy Winehouse, and I just think she has such a like distinct look about her. And so I was like, I'm going to make Snow White look like Amy Winehouse. And yeah, I had her, it was like right after she eats the poison apple in the forest. So she's like dying and all these animals are just watching her. And I don't know, it got really dark, but yeah.
We're loving it, by the way. That sounds incredible.
And the guy that bought it was like, I think he said he was like a zoologist or something. Like he got it because of the animals that were in the forest. So I was like, well, that's cool. And yeah, it was just really cool.
He's had enough of people watching animals die, and he's like, let's do the opposite. Okay, so on the flip side, are there any pieces that you like don't love, or that you have to scrap, or that you just kind of cringe when you see?
Yeah, so I've had a lot of cases where I'm like drawing something and I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. And then I look at it like the next day and I'm like, this is so terrible. So I have kind of, I've like developed this like technique where like, I don't know if it's a technique, but I'll start drawing it and then like I'll have to take a break from it and I'll come back to it like the next day. And then if I still love it, then great. Sometimes I can come back to it like a week later. If I still love it, awesome, I'll keep going. And if not, then I'll just toss it. But there's one that I like comes to mind, and it was a Patreon drawing. And it was actually like really popular. It was Hansel and Gretel. But there's like this, I did the tree, like it's like a tangent, like the part of the tree looks like it's like behind the house and the other part looks like, I don't know, it just doesn't look right. And it's all that I see when I look at that, but it drives me crazy when people are like, oh, I'll take that one. I love that. And I'm like,
you're like, you should keep looking. Look around a little bit. Don't decide so fast.
Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely some that, I'm not as crazy about as I am others. But we're also like our own toughest critics. So,
always in art and in life.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to throw a curveball in there, and if you don't want to answer this one because it's not on the list, but it just popped in my head, and I will edit it out if you don't want to answer it. But since you're on Patreon, you have kind of a following going on. You obviously probably take commissions. Are there like those commissions that are really strange? And you're like, no, thank you. Like I'm gonna.
That's a great question.
Yeah, I had one. It was a long time ago. Guy wanted me to paint him as I'm not a big Seinfeld person. I don't even really know a lot about the show, but it's the Kramer from Seinfeld. Wanted me to paint his face as Kramer from Seinfeld. Like, I don't know. And he wanted, like, this was supposed to be like this huge painting, and he was willing to like pay a lot of money for it. But I was kind of like, I don't know. Just like, I don't know enough about the subject matter.
I think I know exactly what painting you're talking about.
Yeah,
for sure.
There's a really famous one.
I know, and I did some research on it, but I was like, I don't know.
That's not nearly as weird as I was thinking it might be. But
yeah,
and that's the good news. That's the good news.
Yeah. I know a lot of people have asked me to paint pet portraits in the past, and recently I'm doing I've done a couple of them, and I'm like, this actually is really fun. It's kind of therapeutic because it's not like I have to like do a lot of thinking about like designing characters or anything. It's just, so it's kind of mindless enjoyment. But yeah, there for a while I was like, I wish people would stop asking me for pet portraits.
Well, I guess that's the balance between, living your heart's desire and commerce, right?
Yeah.
You got to go kind of where people, if you're in business, you kind of got to go where people want to go with it.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I was at your table at the horror festival in Colorado, which was very cool, I noticed you had some merch created by other people. Yes. Tell us more about these people and how you know them.
Well, I mentioned before that my mom has always had a passion for art. And she, like, when I started doing these, she also started, she was really worried that I wouldn't have enough stuff at my table to sell. And I don't think she realized that, like, I have stuff just like piles.
It's almost the opposite problem, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, cool. I don't have enough.
But she was like, well, I'm going to make she makes those, she's always making things for people in our family. And a lot of people have told her, like, you really should like try to sell them or, and she's like, no, I just like really enjoy making them. And so, yeah, the first show I did, she was like, okay, well, I'm going to make some of these gnomes. She makes these gnomes and she'll do them like themed. Like she's done a Grinch gnome for around Christmas time. And for the horror convention, she's done like a Dracula gnome, and she did the Cousin It's.
Yeah,
those
are the ones I remember.
Yeah, I love those.
Yeah. So yeah, the first one, she realized like, oh, like I'm making some money. I'm actually doing okay. So yeah. So then she's just kind of partnered with me since then, and it's a lot of fun, but it's getting to where now like it's so stressful to set up our table because we have so much stuff.
Are you about to kick her out of the booth? Be like, Mom, I think you're doing great.
No, I could not do that.
Oh, I just realized that your mom's probably going to listen to this. Never mind. You will never part with Mom in the booth. It's going to always be a forever thing.
Yeah. And she's always like, for as long as like you want me there. And I'm like, no, you will always be.
It's forever. It's forever.
And then my brother started a honey business. So, my brother is just like the most interesting person to me because he will find something like that he's interested in and he will like research it and just like devour it and want to do it. And it's just so cool to me that like, so yeah, he's always trying new things, and he decided to get some bees, and I am terrified of bees. So I don't know, but
apparently so is he though, right?
Yeah, he is too. Which is what's really funny.
That's my favorite detail of the story.
Yeah.
He's all, Dad, will you just run out there and grab that honey for me?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, he sells honey, from his bees. And so he asked if I would see how they do at the convention. I designed his logo, the zombie.
Yes, it's a zombie bee. It's so cool.
Yeah.
That's actually one of my very favorite pieces of yours, I think.
Thank you. But yeah, so I had his honey out there, and yeah, so it's kind of become a family thing.
So cute.
So what is your interest level and experience with nerdy stuff like role-playing games, video games, and all the different fandoms that are out there? I mean, I would assume obviously horror, but anything beyond that, like what have you kind of dived into?
So I don't have really any experience with role-playing games. I do have a PlayStation, and I got really into The Witcher.
Nice.
So,
You're already there.
So,
you got your toe in the water.
You're so damn close right now. So close.
But yeah, I loved that game. And then I also got really into Resident Evil, which
Nice.
like has so many jump scares that I have to prep myself.
I just want to say, I'm going to rep my boy here, but Aaron is an incredible dungeon master, and he loves putting horror elements in his games. And you said something earlier about a vampire gnome, I think in reference to the things your mom does. And gnomes are a playable class in D&D. And I was like, oh my God, what if there was actually a vampire gnome and it was a character? And what if I
That
played?
would be so
We can make that happen. I mean,
So you can probably feel this coming, but this is going to be a formal invitation for you to play a game with us. And we can do it online, just like we're doing now. So that could be super duper fun. And if so, I call the vampire gnome.
I am going to need kind of some guidance on how to play, but
Oh, we got you. It's like kind of what we do.
exactly.
And hey, we could even recommend some very specific episodes of a very specific podcast to help you along the way.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Okay, so is that a yes?
Yes, that's a definite yes.
Oh my God, this is happening. Also, obviously, mom and brother are invited, and dad, the beekeeper.
Yeah, awesome.
Could be so fun.
I will let them know.
All right, so we're kind of coming to the end here, but I want to make sure that people really understand how to find you. So this is the shameless plug that you've been practicing when you're at conventions and stuff. But tell us, how do we find your work?
I am really active on Instagram. So my Instagram is my first and last name. Illustrations was taken. So someone else apparently is.
Good luck to you, Illustrations. We're so happy for you and your success.
But no, good for her. That's awesome. Her name is Allison, I think. So I guess it kind of fits a little bit better than Alyssa. But Alyssa Leischer is my Instagram handle. Yeah, derailed that one totally. But and then, I have a Patreon too. My username on Patreon is also Alyssa Leischer. I also have a website, and that is www.illustrations.com.
Thanks for putting W's in there.
Yeah. You're welcome. What else? I think that's mainly it. Yeah. I'm mainly post on Instagram and Patreon though. Those are my two.
And then any cons coming up that we need to know about?
I'm going to be going to Midsummer Scream in July. That one's in Long Beach, California.
Nice.
And it's huge. It's so much fun. I went last year and I had so much fun there. And then I'm trying to get into Colorado Festival of Horror. So hopefully.
Samesies.
Yeah. That'd be awesome. So yeah, we'll see. And then there's another one in Colorado that I'm going to try to do. It's in Aurora, and I think it's called the Colorado Horror and Pop Festival.
That's cool.
Apparently Coloradans are all about the horror stuff.
I know. Yeah.
Also, just one quick note that I figured out, because I'm not really a horror person. Aaron's all about it. I'm kind of squeamish. So this was kind of my first foray into the horror fandom. And I will say, some of the nicest damn people I've ever met. And it's still, it's like a paradox in my mind. They're dressed, blood splattered, they're carrying around a butcher knife, and you literally could not meet kinder or supportive people. What the hell is up with that?
Well, and my mom and I were actually talking about it afterwards. We're like, gosh, everyone was just so cheerful too.
We might as well have been at a Midwestern pie convention.
Yeah. And it's like that at pretty much all of them. I've never, there's never been a single person that has been just like, I don't like your stuff sucks or, like,
I bet if we were,
something I was so worried about when I first started them, but
I bet if we were at a kindness festival, they wouldn't be any nicer than they would be at the horror festival. If someone out there who's listening to this can explain this to me, please help me understand, because I don't get it.
All right. So we're down to our final question. What did we forget to ask you, or is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
So you guys are planning on doing more conventions, is that?
That's the plan.
Sure. Okay. Awesome.
I know this is the gotcha question for everyone.
No one's like,
my favorite. I'm going to buy you some.
I'm not really a great interviewer.
No, you're good. You're great. My favorite was, and I don't even remember who did it. I think it was the librarian, maybe Aaron. But she goes, "Oh, you should ask me about X," and then she made us ask her.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Like she literally made us ask her the question, and then she answered it, which I thought was really funny. So this is the part where you can actually make us. You can actually make us ask a question if you want.
I think your guys' questions were awesome. I mean, and I'm sure she thought that they were awesome too. But
she's a librarian, so she was used to nitpicking people.
That's right.
I guess, how did you guys get into what you do? Like, how did you have role playing games always been like a huge part of your life, or was there just something that like happened that you were like, I don't know? Did you just like meet other people that were into it? And
Dun, dun, dun. Bryan, you take this one. You tell our story much better. So.
Okay, so starting with me back in the late 70s, when I was a wee lad, I found the first edition Dungeons and Dragons source books. And actually, one my screensaver, like behind me right now, is the cover art for the first edition of the Monster Manual. And I was way too young and way too bad at math to actually be able to understand and play the game. So it was actually the artwork that got me into it. So I bought this Monster Manual and I used to pour through it. And it was just black ink drawings. And it was so amazing to me that people would spend this much time in the world of imagination. So for me, this is why this interview with you today is so gratifying, because art is such a key component to the role-playing experience, as Aaron said at the top. And that's always been a really key entry point for me. And so, Alyssa, when I walked by your booth, I was like, holy shit, like, this is it. It's this like from the heart, imaginative, crazy artwork that just really, really draws me in. So that's what started it for me. And I didn't actually start playing the games until COVID.
Oh, okay.
So Aaron calls me a COVID baby because it was like, I'm new here. I just got started. He has been playing since high school. He started with this game called Vampire the Masquerade, which is a role-playing game, and it's wild, and there's like whole cultures of vampires. And it's weird, and it's bloody, and it's sexy, and it's gory, and you would probably love it.
Yeah.
And so he's been a game master or a dungeon master for years. And so he runs games constantly, like sometimes multiple times a week. He could do it at the drop of a hat. He could probably run a game for us right now.
Probably. Yes.
And so we met at this event that he ran called One Shot Weekend, where he gets a bunch of friends together and we all just play role-playing games. And we did it up in the mountains in this really remote town in Colorado. Mm-hmm. We happened to drive back to Denver together, and we had this extended conversation. And at the end of it, we were both like, holy shit, that was such a great conversation. We should record these conversations and we could have a podcast.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What did I miss, Aaron, in your story?
Oh, I think you got it all there for the most part. I mean, everything else is just little tiny nuances, but I'm good with where you went with it. It was good.
So Aaron ends up being the content expert, and Bryan ends up being the like inquisitive, like, ooh, what's that?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that about the artwork, because I have some friends that I've kind of seen. Well, I don't know. I don't think I retained really anything that was happening, but I have kind of watched them play the game Dungeons and Dragons. And I remember like I was hanging out. It was my friend, and so her boyfriend was at like this. It was like a store where they had like, I don't even know, like tables set up and people were just playing games.
They're everywhere. They're in every city,
Okay.
and it's such a beautiful thing because everyone goes there to play games and buy shit they don't need.
Yeah. But yeah, my friend, she had lived kind of far away, and where this thing was happening was near where I lived. So she was like, yeah, I'm going to drop him off and then like we can go hang out. And then she went to go pick him back up and I went with her, and I was walking around the store and I was like, the artwork is just so amazing. And so, yeah, I guess I'm not like, I'm a total beginner. I have no idea what, what they're all about really, but the artwork definitely has drawn me in for, a long time, I guess.
Yeah, I would say the artwork for the RPG books are definitely in the same genre as you are. And we talked about it at the con, and I'm hopeful that we can continue the conversation about a collab between you and us, because we have a lot of ideas about our own adventures and even our own game systems that we may be able to, that we want to work on. And of course, you can't just publish a brick of text.
Yeah.
If you're going to provide this for your players,
you need
to see some of the things that you're thinking about.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Alyssa, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a true pleasure to have you on, and we're admirers of your work and your hustle.
Thank you. It's
that hustle
awesome with you guys.
And always, thank you, my friends, for spending time with us this week. Please check us out on our aforementioned Instagram account or at our website, infernalschoolhouse.com. Oh, and we sell stuff on Etsy too.
And a quick reminder that we are now live streaming our Monsters of the Week campaign on Twitch. You can watch our bi-weekly live episodes at twitch.tv/Infernal Schoolhouse, with our next one on June 3rd. Those only stick around for 7 days on Twitch, so catch our past episodes at youtube.com/@Infernal Schoolhouse. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.